powers that be. Sponsored by Alex R. White. Personal injury lawyers you can trust.
The gloves are off in the race to replace Senator Mitch McConnell here in Kentucky. Thanks so much for joining us here on The Powers That Be. I'm Isaiah Kim-Martinez.
Hi, Isaiah, and I'm Doug Proffitt, and we are joined by the head of the Jefferson County Republican Party. This is Don Fitzpatrick, as Don sits in a county, in a city that is still heavily controlled by the Democrats in the top offices. He's trying to upset that. So during this 30 minutes, we're going to get to know him. And we want to point out, Isaiah, that in your next episode, we'll be talking to the new head of the Democratic Party.
The new chairman.
Here in Metro Louisville. Yep. So, Don, do you...
Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Well, thank you for having me.
Do you think you're going to upset the balance of power in this county? I mean, this is the county where Mitch McConnell first became the Jefferson County Republican judge executive in 1977, 78.
And prior to that, by the way, Doug, he was actually chair of the Jefferson County Republican Party for a year.
There you go.
So 50 years ago. So in any event, but yeah, we're working hard. And if you look at where we were, just using Metro Council as an example, if we were having this discussion 4 years ago when I became chair, I had been involved prior to that. But at that time we had 19 Democrats and 7 Republicans, and now, after 2 election cycles, it's 13 Democrats, 12 Republicans, and an independent. So we think that's real progress, and we're looking forward this year to bumping our number up to 15.
Yeah. And Don, we're going to talk more about those local races here in just a bit. Obviously, as chair of the Jefferson County Republican Party, the Metro Council races are one of your top priorities, but then you do oversee statewide races, federal races in certain cases. We know you were with a congressional candidate in Lexington this past weekend to watch the statewide Lincoln Dinner, the big annual event where we saw some top candidates, the Republican nominees in multiple races, kind of give their blueprint, I guess, for November.
I thought it was a very, very upbeat event. Isaiah, you were there. Mm-hmm. And I think by virtue of the fact that there were almost 1,000 excited people there to listen to the various speakers. And again, the 2 congressional candidates, or actually 3, including Ed Gallrein, and Andy Barr. I mean, look, Andy is ready day one. The background and experience that Andy has had in D.C. is second to none. So it was a very exciting event, and we're excited to support our candidates in the statewide events.
Speaking on Andy Barr, obviously him versus Charles Booker, that's going to be the top of the ticket in November, the Senate race to replace McConnell. They are already trading blows. Here are some of the highlights from these past couple of days.
Andy Barr is a slimier version of Mitch McConnell, and he's a phonier version of Donald Trump. He's a sellout.
Democrat Charles Booker of Louisville firing back at Republican Andy Barr, his opponent in the race for Mitch McConnell's Senate seat.
I am ready on day one. Charles Booker will never be ready.
What has he done for the people of Kentucky while he's been in Congress? Nothing. He's a failure, and so he's saying whatever he can.
Booker did not hold back in his response to Barr's speech at the Republican Party of Kentucky's Lincoln Dinner over the weekend, where the congressman went on the attack.
This is a contest between Kentucky common sense and crazy. We cannot let crazy win. My opponent, Charles Booker, is the Mamdani of Kentucky.
He's comparing you to the New York City mayor, a Democratic socialist. Is that something you push back on?
I really don't care what they call me. I know what I'm fighting for. If I'm being called someone that's standing up for progress, so be it. I just want the people of Kentucky to have a government that works for them.
Barr is endorsed by President Donald Trump and backed by McConnell and his supporters behind the scenes. He's targeted Booker for months, even before the Louisville Democrat won his primary last month, and the criticisms have escalated since then.
He wants to abolish ICE, defund the police, and abolish cash bail for criminals. He thinks Americans should pay reparations for a sin over which they had no control.
He does not believe in any of the things he's saying right now. He has to read off an index card to determine what hateful thing he's going to say next, and people can see through it.
Booker sat down for an interview with me at a coffee shop just west of downtown Louisville.
There was once a time when he was considered to be a moderate Republican. He supports diversity. He knows it. He knows that funding endless war is a problem. He just doesn't care anymore because he thinks it's his way to get to power.
The Barr campaign responded to Booker's comments, telling me in part, quote, while Andy Barr delivered the largest tax cut and border security law in history, Charles Booker was operating a nonprofit that is more about padding his own pockets than community organizing. Kentucky Common Sense will win over Charles Booker's craziness this November.
He wants to turn me into a caricature because he knows that when the people of Kentucky hear what I'm standing for and they hear what he's standing for, they're going to stand with me.
Well, Don, I've had other Democrats, not just what Charles Booker told Isaiah there, that Andy Barr, they believe, was more of a moderate Republican years ago. They've said to me, what happened to him? Has he changed? I mean, you were sort of involved with him before he gave that speech to the GOP. You were actively talking to him about some of the talking points.
Look, I don't think Andy Barr has changed much at all, frankly. I think he's always been a common-sense conservative that's been willing to work across the aisle. He's got tremendous experience. Back when I was serving as IBM senior state executive, I had the opportunity to call on our federal delegation numerous times. Andy is always on top of the facts. He understands a lot of things that are more complex than slogans. And I think he is somebody that truly has a grasp on what needs to get done to move this Commonwealth and this nation forward. So I don't think Andy's going to be, not going to be a lot of sloganeering. I think the bottom line is Andy can talk about real results that he's delivered. And Charles Booker, with all due respect, can talk about aspirations. But I want to see more clearly how these aspirations, number one, who pays for them? And number two, how executable, if you would, are some of these going to be? It's great to put neat ideas up there like Mr. Mondami in New York. At the end of the day, you got to make them work. And that's something that Andy Barr has had the opportunity to demonstrate for 14 years in D.C.
Well, Don, I mean, we're in late June right now. Generally speaking, the voters kind of go into hibernation, don't come back out until later in the fall. But this is an important time for both campaigns to sort of strategize how they're going to attack each other, how they're going to hit each other. And I mean, they're saying some pretty harsh words right now, even in just the summer is starting. You see Andy Barr really leaning into this concept of common sense versus crazy. You heard Charles Booker throw multiple insults at him. He said he's a joke, he's a coward, an opportunist. I mean, tell me just from a strategy perspective, is this notable, the fact that they're throwing these things at each other relatively early with still more than 4 months left
It's
until
still
the general?
June.
Yeah.
Well, I think, some of the words that Mr. Booker has used, they're emotional words. I mean, a joke, whatever. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you've either got the experience and the gravitas to be a United States senator and deliver on what you say you're going to deliver on for the people of Kentucky and the U.S., or you don't. Charles is unproven. He's run a couple of times, but like a number of folks in the Democrat Party, sorry to sound partisan, but they're great at getting elected or talking points to help them get elected or
Well,
close.
Don, during the primary, we saw a lot of pandering toward President Donald Trump. They were after that endorsement. Andy Barr was one of the top panderers to get that endorsement. He got the endorsement. Has he moved toward MAGA more during the course of this campaign than he was as he was a congressman representing Central Kentucky for so long? Was he more moderate, in your view?
I think it would be unnatural, Doug, for a candidate not to seek the president's endorsement, number one. In doing so, I think in both parties, there are times where you make statements or align yourself with things that are a little bit further from the 50-yard line, and that's probably what happened here. But at the same time, I think when you look at the overall situation with the other party, and Charles Booker is no exception, they're moving so far left that I think emotion is carrying the day. We'll see what happens tonight, by the way, in New York with some of the Mondami-backed candidates going after some very solid Democrats, one in particular, a Hispanic representative. So, look, I mean, Andy did what he needed to do to win the nomination, and one of the things that he needed to get was the president's endorsement. I don't know that I'd say pander, but I certainly think he has been a strong supporter of the president via legislation that he has continued to back the president on the last number of years, both in the first and second.
We should make it clear. The New York City mayor comes up a lot, but Charles Booker has not wrapped himself around Zohran Mamdani.
Right,
Not-
and that is a term that
Barr uses.
Yeah, Andy Barr has been calling Charles Booker the Mamdani of Kentucky for several months. I remember I was in Elizabethtown at a campaign stop, and he was really using that term over and over, the Democratic Socialist who's now mayor of New York City. To Doug's point in that interview, when I kept on kind of asking him, how do you perceive that? Because it's one thing for us to say that's an insult, but some people, that's actually a compliment, depending on what side of the aisle you fall on. And he didn't really exactly say, yeah, Zohran is my guy. I mean, I think he understands he's operating in Kentucky, and the term Democratic Socialist holds some weight, maybe not positively for if you want to maybe win over some of those moderate voters. Why is that insult so forefront in Barr's campaign right now? Why that?
About Mamdani?
Yeah.
Well, I think because it's a guy that ran with a boatload of promises who's not delivered. So when you look at the importance of delivering on your promise, there's an example there. I mean, you don't have to study too far back in history to see what has happened when people are promised free stuff and very little responsibility associated with that free stuff. So Mamdani is already dropping the ball on a number of things that he's done. So I think it's a fair comparison.
Did you
personally.
suggest that storyline to Andy Barr to use it? Connect Booker to Zohran Mamdani?
No.
Okay.
No,
Just wondering.
I think Andy's a man of his own mind. He does listen every once in a while to one or two of my suggestions. We've known each other a long time, but look, I think this gets back to what's the right thing for the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Honestly, I think we've just got to get focused on how legislation is passed in D.C. and how you make things happen that benefit the folks here in Kentucky. I think a lot of times people have misunderstood, perhaps not fully grasped, the level of gravitas. We were, on the part of Mitch McConnell, we were punching way above our weight class for a long time based on the impact and the respect that Mitch McConnell had with both Democrats and Republicans, of course. So I think, whoever wins, and we were pretty confident that Andy's well positioned, they're going to have very big shoes to fill with Mitch McConnell.
And I do want to point out, like we said in the piece, that President Donald Trump, of course, has endorsed Andy Barr. We know that Senator McConnell has been working his allies behind the scenes to prop Barr up, ready for this race. On the Democratic side, though, Charles Booker has the endorsement of Governor Andy Beshear. And also, he told me that he's getting more support from national Democrats as well, and he's sort of seeing more of that influence. How do you see this playing out in November with so many of these national powers coming? We know this seat, the Cook Political Report still rates it as solid Republican. How do you see the Beshear and the national Democrat influence affecting Charles Booker as far as how this plays out?
Well, I think Beshear's endorsement is expected, and I think it'll probably help solidify certain, factions within the Democrat Party. I don't think it moves the nickel at all relative to independents and Republicans. I don't. At the end of the day, it comes down to what Charles stands for. Charles is a nice guy. I remember I saw him a couple of months ago at the Bishop's table that one Friday morning, and I said I wished him luck in the primary. I said, and on March 20th, we'll get into if you're the nominee, we'll get into the rest of it.
Let's talk about the other Democrat he's trying to unseat, and that's Congressman Morgan McGarvey, the 3rd District seat, because I'm interested. You've seen how popular Morgan McGarvey is, and in this district, which still leans Democratic, why do you think he's vulnerable?
Oh, boy, I think once I live in Anchorage. My wife and I have been there 31 years. And when you talk to folks, and Morgan grew up in Anchorage, down about a couple of miles from us, when you talk to folks that have known Morgan in the past and you point out some of his votes, they're surprised. Very often they sit back and say, what do you mean? He voted against protecting women's sports. He voted against the Lake and Riley Act. He voted against the Evils of Socialism resolution. He didn't show up at the State of the Union. He's been around town talking about, in certain areas, talking about how important it is for the Democrats to be able to protect certain groups within our city. I think people are paying attention, and believe me, we will help them pay attention to Morgan's voting record. At the end of the day, from what I've told, he was working pretty well with Republicans in the state Senate. He's not working well with Republicans from what I am seeing and what people that we talk to in Washington are seeing. He's voting consistently with Hakeem Jeffries. I think his biggest challenge is he wants to move up into a committee chairmanship, and I know he's been pretty successful, from what I understand, in making some investments and whatnot. So, that's I guess a good thing as well these days. But the bottom line is, look at his voting record, Doug, and it's out of step with most people here, even in Jefferson County.
And the Republican nominee in this third congressional race is somebody that you have not just supported, but you helped sort of birth this campaign from the start. Her name is Maria Rodriguez.
Yep.
We've actually had her in our studio here, Cuban-American, came here to the United States 17 years ago or so with her mother from Cuba.
Yep.
And she, of course, was one of the keynote speakers at this statewide dinner. Here's some of what she had to say.
I know what happened when individual liberty is sacrificed for political ideology. I know what happens when faith is pushed out of public life and citizens become dependent on the government instead of empowered by opportunity. My life experiences have shaped my convictions. As a legal immigrant whose family waited years to come to America, I believe we must secure our borders, enforce our laws, and preserve an immigration system that welcomes those who follow the rules and pursue the American dream.
Rodriguez there, again, in Lexington, Kentucky. Don, obviously, you played a heavy role, I'm sure, in crafting this message. I mean, there's a reason why you sought her out. Can you explain what were your takeaways from what she just said right there?
Well, I think Maria is a great example of a Cuban-American success story. It's truly an American success story. And as I had met her a couple of times in the past, at various events, it struck me that uniquely, especially with the president and what happened with Venezuela, with Maduro and his wife, first couple of days of this year,
right.
And some of the focus on Cuba. When I share with people the fact that Louisville has the largest Cuban population in the country outside of the state of Florida, even people here don't realize that.
We really didn't know it till the New York Times did the story on
Yep.
it. You've been fundraising for her. You just got back from a trip to Miami. We have photos of that fundraising party or get-together that you had down there. What kind of campaign are we going to see from her going to November? Because she's still unknown by a majority of Louisvillians who will have to vote in this race. Is she going to be on television? Or are we going to see billboards? Lay out
We've
the
seen
campaign
signs.
for us. Right.
We have seen signs around some areas of eastern Jefferson County I've seen.
Lay out the campaign for us. Is it going to be high profile? Because Morgan McGarvey's going to have a lot of money.
Oh, he does have a lot of money, and we fully understand and appreciate that. It is going to be higher profile than anything you've seen in this particular race for quite a while. Bottom line is, we think we've got a tremendous comparison to Morgan McGarvey and his views versus a woman who is a success story, who is one of the most grounded people in her faith. She had to leave Cuba by virtue of her mother actually being thrown in jail a couple of times. So, she was a very devout Catholic and looking to spread the Catholic religion. They came over here in 2009. She worked in the slaughterhouse for a couple of years. And Doug, when you get, and then she and her husband built a business, and then she finished her medical training to become a nurse at the only Tier 1 trauma center in the state. So that's a success story. Getting back to your point, that will be very straightforward to communicate. And I think when you make you contrast that with Morgan McGarvey's voting record, it's amazing to me. I mean, it was interesting, when he skipped the State of the Union address, which I thought was just inappropriate personally. But when he skipped that, he talked about, he made a quote that basically said that that basically our government is unleashing unimaginable violence. Oh, excuse me? That was the end of it. Excuse me? Unleashing unimaginable violence, and yet at the same time, right around, he votes against the horrors of socialism, where you've talked about tens of millions of people being killed around the world in history based on socialism and communism. So we're up to this task. We are going to have money coming in from outside. The Republican Party is now looking at this as much more of a national.
How much did
race
you
of
raise
interest.
in Miami?
Well, let's say our objective was to raise tens of thousands of dollars, and we achieved our objective.
Don, let me ask you this. Much like the Senate race Republican stronghold. This is obviously a Democratic stronghold. You could argue sort of in the same way, flip the other way. You talk about some of the things you would like to hit Morgan McGarvey on, certain issues, certain policy positions. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maria does not strike me as someone who is necessarily a podium pounder and at least publicly will go after Morgan on this. Will she, or how do you get that message across when it seems she's clearly more about kind of explaining her origin story and why she's running?
Well, I think she does understand the issues, and I think she'll be able to translate her understanding of the issues and of, look, Morgan recently came out with this idea of giving $500 a month to all folks between 18 and 24. You're aware
It's expanding the local.
Expanding the local, but that this is not. I mean, this is anybody that signs up from everything I've read about it. So those kind of things, to me, strikes at the beginning of a basic universal income. And it also is appealing to a generation that I know right now are having tough time, finding jobs, et cetera. But at the end of the day, Maria is very capable of talking specifically about some of his votes and what he's been trying to do, and contrast that and actually give personal experience about what happened in Cuba when programs like that in language like that as well.
Who is
starts
she going to
take it.
connect with? What voter in this community is she going to connect with that isn't already loyal to Morgan McGarvey? I mean, is she going to go out to try to sway his voters over? Or you're going through a whole new base in Jefferson County.
Oh, look, we've got the Republicans very excited about her. And we're outnumbered in Jefferson County. I mean, it's been that way for a long time. We're chipping away. But it's the Republicans, it's the independent, and then some of the leaning left Democrats, Doug, that when you point out what Morgan has been doing, how he has been voting, they kind of sit back and say, well, I didn't know that. And then you contrast it with somebody that's a true American success story and someone in this national discussion about socialism versus free market capitalism that can actually speak from experience and would be a tremendous asset to the people of Jefferson County when she goes to D.C.
She did say, quote, "I believe America must reject socialism," as someone who grew up in a socialist system, were her words. Yep. We have more to go here, talking about some of the local races, but first we have this word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Sue, distracted driver.
Attorney Alex White. If you're injured, visit SueDistractedDriver.com.
Welcome back here on The Powers That Be, joined again by Jefferson County Republican Party Chairman Don Fitzpatrick. Again, appreciate your time. And Doug, we're going to dive into some of the local races we have.
We're going to talk specifics, but first I think people need to understand more about you, Don. What kind of Republican are you? Are you a MAGA Trump Republican? Or are you somewhere between Ronald Reagan, George the Bushes, maybe H.W. or George W. and Mitch McConnell? Give us your description. People are putting the filter through everything, all in the political parties right now. Where do you stand, especially here in Jefferson County?
I'll answer that by saying my grandfather, Ben Jensen, spent 26 years in Congress. And he used to say to me, Don, the real work gets done if you're looking at the football field on the 50-yard line plus or minus 15. And I believe we have to have people that are willing to work, across the aisle to bring folks in that are a little bit closer to the respective end zones, get them on board, and try to hammer things out, even across party lines, so we can get work done. So if that makes me a MAGA person or a Reagan person, I mean, those are all things as far as I'm concerned. I'm somebody that wants to get things done and improve things.
Personally, who do you lean more toward, though? Is it President Trump and MAGA, or are you more on the Reagan, Bush, McConnell side?
Well, I would say that Ronald Reagan was a man of tremendous vision. I support President Trump, and I believe he's doing some things that no other person on this planet could do right now. So as far as measuring where I am between the two of them, I support both, and President Trump's our president right now, and he's got my 100% support.
Don, the Louisville Metro Council currently is very, very tight party as far as parties are concerned. Right. I know this is a nonpartisan election moving forward for Metro Council, but we know, depending on who they caucus with, what parties they align with these candidates. Right now, there are 13 Democrats, 12 Republicans, 1 independent. There are 13 of those seats up for grabs. Tell me your strategy. Give me 3 races that you believe are highly competitive and ones you guys are trying to flip.
So we actually are looking at picking up 3 seats to take it from 12 to 15. Let's talk about 7. And I think, that's one of the ones as we take a look at it.
And remind me again, is that Paula McCraney?
Yeah, it's Paula. She was on
the
last
independent.
week.
Yeah,
I watched that.
What is your slogan? Is it still protect 5, pick up 3?
It started as, like last year, or 2 years ago, was protect 4, pick up 3, and we got them all. We had people saying, Don, you're not running somebody in every single race. You're right, we're not. We're focused where we believe we have a good shot at winning, and we got all of them, as you know, 2 years ago. This year, it started out with 5 plus 3, and we ended up having the Democrat in 25 that was running against Khalil Batshon drop out. And then also the Democrat in 19 has dropped out. So now we have 2 Republicans running against each other, which will be an interesting situation, a first for us in a general election. So again, we go back to 7. We've got a great candidate in Kat Timmerman. She is high energy, JCPS teacher. She's already knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors. She's got a big group that she goes out with. And I think, with all due respect to Councilwoman McCraney, and I've had positive interactions with her, I don't get the sense she's going to work it that hard. I believe her, she has said last week in your program that her record speaks for itself, and that's fine. That's a good position to take. But I think we've got somebody that's high energy that really is going to bring positive change, and so that's certainly one of the ones that we really want to focus on. I would say also in 21, we've got a candidate in Lonnie Joseph that he ended up finishing second to Betsy Rui in the primary, but I think Lonnie.
Betsy Rui's the incumbent.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, and Betsy's the incumbent. Lonnie has been the president of the Division 4 Police Association. He's the head of his homeowners association. This guy has been around, and he's another person that has been out knocking on doors. Isaiah and Doug, what we emphasize with our candidates is you got to get out there, knock on doors, engage people, because whether they like the incumbent or not, a lot of times most of them don't know who the incumbent is.
They're kind of indifferent, or they're unaware.
They're unaware. But they remember the person that took the time to stop by, say hello, exchange an idea, and listen to them.
A council member is going to face major issues in this community. One of them is a data center. Where do you stand on the data centers? What are you advising your candidates their position should be on data centers and development in this community?
Because Doug made the point to Paula McCraney that could dictate some of the voting. I mean, she didn't really feel that was the case. I mean, is that your mindset on it?
Well, actually, I'm going to agree with Councilwoman McCraney because she said it's really more the economy and how it's affecting people. But the data, look, I spent 40 years in the tech business globally, so I have a pretty good understanding of what's going on. This is an international challenge for us. We can't lose some of the things around AI and quantum computing. However, we need to be thoughtful about where we are putting the data centers in. There's been some discussion about perhaps a limit of 500,000 feet size footprint data center here in Jefferson County. Whether it's that number or slightly higher or slightly below, I think we do want to be participating, an active participant in helping bring this country forward. AI is not going away. Quantum computing is right around the corner. I spent decades in this.
Are you telling these candidates you better have a position on this?
Absolutely.
What are you telling them?
Well, pretty much what I just said. That let's find a reasonable approach that they can live with, and that they believe their constituents can live with. Because again, Doug, it depends on the district, right? I mean, in district, I'll pick on my own district, District 18. I don't think that's around Anchorage and that area. I don't know that that's a huge issue. Now that's not up this year, but there are some of the other districts where you have more potential space to actually put a data center in. It gets back to smart planning. Not to build it and they will come. And it also comes back to getting money to ensure that it gets done the right way. But these data centers are a great opportunity for us. And I think what we have to do in the state is figure out what the best approach is. But for Jefferson County, we're more of an urban area. And I think there needs to be some focus on, okay, how big a data center, and clearly communicating what are the environmental issues. And if our voters feel that they're concerned about that, we better have answers. And that's the other thing that we're really working on with our candidates.
So data centers, you said, not going to be the top issue that you're advising your candidates to push. Is it public safety? Because we were going to ask, the juvenile violence issue seems to just keep coming up every single summer, it seems like. Is that, what's the strategy with that? Addressing juvenile crime, things of that nature.
Well, you have to have public safety for people to feel comfortable in their living room. But also, if we're trying to attract businesses to come into Louisville and build here in Jefferson County, we don't want to have a reputation where folks just aren't that comfortable with the public safety or lack thereof here in this county. So I think we have to continue to focus on that, but tie that into meaningful topics like how it impacts business growth. First and foremost, really how it impacts the people that are affected by it. One of the things about
like
Maria
Bardstown Road is what you're talking about.
Well, Bardstown, but also one of the things Maria Rodriguez has shared so many stories with me about people young kids being brought in with horrible gunshot wounds and other things. So, look, this is something that we have to, and U of L Medical gets the heavy-duty ones. We know that. So this is something that we have to, as a party, step up to, but do it in a way that demonstrates that we're concerned about the constituents here. We're concerned also about making sure that we can bring companies in, and that's also that balancing act. And when you take a look at low-income housing or lower-income housing, affordable, I should say, bottom line there is, let's make sure that we have an appropriate strategy that includes making sure that places are ready to accommodate, some of the things that some of the developers want to do. We need to grow as a community. That means we need affordable housing. We need to be open to things like data centers. We also need to have a safe community.
Real quick, before we go, 30 seconds left, what's one issue you hit incumbents on when you're at someone's door and say, this is why you don't want to revote this person in?
Gee, Isaiah, it depends on the person, honestly.
Yeah.
But I think, look, our Metro Council has been our folks have been sticking together pretty well. And the focus that we advise them to convey is that we want to work with Democrats, but we believe that the conservative approach that our candidates represent, whether it's public safety, economic development, things that really matter to them, that we are listening and that we understand on a district-by-district basis what's most important in that district. And that's really the best way to do it. And a lot of times our folks have come back and said, something, I'm going to change my approach a little bit because I've talked to 5 people in the last 3 weeks, knocking on doors, and they've specifically talked about a topic in my district that I'm now going to hit.
And even though it's not-partisan, you're telling people this is a Republican candidate, or they're exposing their party affiliation.
Oh, we leave it up to them, Doug. We leave it up to them. There's some, look, I've knocked on doors with a number of our candidates, and I knocked on a couple of doors where they had Craig Greenberg signs. And I still knocked on the door. And one of the things I said was that, this person will work in conjunction with the mayor. May not agree the whole time, but we're going to be trying to bring Louisville forward, and that's the key point.
Don Fitzpatrick, again, chair of the Republican Party here in Jefferson County. We appreciate your time, and as a reminder to you all, we will have the Democratic Party chair, Louisville Democratic Party chair on Powers That Be next week. Don, thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you, Isaiah. Thank you, Doug.
Good
Great
luck
to
to
see
you.
you. Thank you.
You all have a great day. Take care.
Bye.
Powers That Be, sponsored by Alex R. White, personal injury lawyers you can trust.